Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Hey, well, thank you, Sean. A lot of people haven't heard him in a while, or for a while. He's still doing fine. He's still married. He's posting all the time on Facebook, so you may want to check out some of his posts. But, you know, he's the guy that puts the rock in Cleveland Rocks, of course. But, hey, we're back. And I think just like the last podcast we had, we got another good designer on. And before I introduce him, I get a lot of folks that I know socially here from gaming, and I keep getting the why don't you have me on? And it's because there's so many inside things that we probably have talked about in the past. People just like they start saying, "The hell you guys talking about?" But I'm very happy to have a great guy, Wes Crawford, on the podcast. It was a lot of stuff to talk to us about. Welcome, Wes.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And how this came about, I threatened, hey, I want to have you on, and then he's like, what's going on? Want to my chopped liver over here? So a snowy day in DC, we had him on. But I'm gonna hit you off with the question we usually ask last. How old were you, and what game did you play that you knew you were going to be a lifelong war gamer?
That's a complicated question, but I started with the Milton Bradley series, Broadsides and Battle Cry and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people I think started with that and just said, "Oh wow, this exists and it's fun and there's a little bit of strategy to it." Even though with Battle Cry, even at age like 9 or 10, I realized a battle didn't really start in Mississippi and continue all the way to Michigan.
Yeah.
You can line up the soldiers like that.
I remember that.
Got the comic books and started buying, games. So there's ads on the back, like Tank Trap and things like that. And, always disappointed in the sense that it didn't look as cool as the ad. But
Never does.
I think what you're really getting to is when did I find like my first Avalon Hill game? And that was in Roanoke,
Not
Virginia.
not
Hmm?
necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay.
But I do want to hear about that first Avalon Hill game.
All right. Well, that was at a department store in Roanoke, Virginia. 1968, I was 11 and I got Midway and then had to get
Oh,
Battle of the Bulge and Stalingrad and U-Boat and all these that from that back in that day. And that was just
I
what
had three of them.
really, yeah. But Mitch, it's like I got into that and then followed with, strategy and tactics and the SPI games and all this sort of thing. But I was then got out of wargaming. Once I hit college, I hardly did anything with it all the way up until about 2018. And because I was on the road a lot and I was doing my music career, and it just got to be a certain point where I said, wow, I really want to get back into this because it was so much fun. And then I found this whole community and gaming had gone so far in those, 30 years
Yeah.
and so many new things. So it's been fun to explore.
I mean, when you
And
and I were playing Battle Cry, Civil War was recent history.
that's
You know.
that's true, but they did have plastic pieces, so it wasn't that recent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's weird. It's like I knew I loved it and I saw the world through the modeling that people would do with these more complex games. And that's how I'd start looking at the world and wow, you can quantify so much and show all these relationships and then game them, give choices and options to players and learn about history. And it never left me in my mind and in my heart, but it did in my time and it spent for a long time.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the story you tell, a lot of us kind of have that story,
Yep.
and like, hey, I got busy with life too. I never really left it. I just went. I did a lot of computer games because you had to do them by yourself. But like, just didn't have the time. Plus, you know, a lot of it is where you live, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I live in the DC area. We have so many gamers here. We often have too many, so we're gonna have
Yep.
to thin down that herd. But yeah, you know, get back into it. So I must have caught you just like as you were getting back into it. But you went really quickly from getting back into it to designing a game, which we're going to talk about. But how'd that happen?
Because when I started playing games, I was designing them. I had the most horrible game on the Battle of Yorktown you'd ever see. I had a game, when I was a kid, this is pre-teenager. I had
Yeah.
something I called 12 O'Clock High, a card game with bombers and ME-109s and all that. I mean, that goes way back. I fast forward a little bit. I did one sort of modeled on the system of D-Day, Avalon Hill's D-Day, on the Battle of Sicily in World War II, and that came out a lot better. If you're satisfied with that kind of system being used. And finally, I spent all my junior year in high school, just about, or maybe it was sophomore, researching the whole European theater of World War II, production schedules, all this sort of thing, and made 6 pieces of large poster board. That was the map. It took up the whole ping pong table, and like 2-inch hexagons, and had a whole World War II in Europe kind of game. And it didn't force you to attack anywhere. It didn't force you to do anything like that. There were event cards, and so this would have been what, 1972, and it was fun. It actually was fun to play. But so I've always been designing. I would get myself out of trouble in school. Some huge project would be assigned. I'd wait too long, and I'd say, well, let me just do a game on that topic. And it would always get an A because, for one thing, the teacher had no idea what the heck I handed in. And it was always way more work than the project, because even writing the rules was more than the paper that was assigned. So I played that game all the way into grad school, and which I dropped out of an MBA program at Virginia Tech in 1980, and never went back to that with
I
music and
mean,
games.
yeah. I mean, you're a world famous drummer, or do you consider yourself a percussionist or a drummer? I I remember saying to somebody he was actually the drummer for my friend's band, and I'm like, "You're a great drummer, man." He goes, "I'm a percussionist," and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I said,
There.
I ought to kick that guy's ass."
No, yeah, that's I don't have that attitude. I don't, really care. My specialty is drum set, but I do hand percussion, and of course, can read and have background in, a lot of different styles. But
Yeah.
no, you can call me a drummer. You can call me, pretty much whatever you want, because drummers get called about anything you'd imagine.
Yeah,
But
and unlike
it's been good life.
and almost like unlike most drummers, you've made it to, you know, past the golden year. You made it into the golden years. And all drummers can say that. And
Yeah.
we'll eventually start talking about music. Your story about the games back then, and I think a lot of us of that age did that, because when you talk about Avalon Hill in the late 60s, early 70s, you're talking about maybe 10 titles. And
Hmm.
SPI, which really wasn't in a lot of stores, Avalon Hill was, um, not a lot of titles. And they were all kind of like, I'm going to say, very, yes, of course, you're going to have the Battle of the Bulge and, something like Midway. But like, I'd say now, a lot of the folks that are getting into wargaming, there's so many titles, and I think there's less of that now because you created games that you wanted to personally enjoy and play with others. Now I could just pick up one of 10 games on any of those topics. Do you think like that's a reason why folks that came up when you and I did get into war game design?
The thing I hear more is people getting taking games and they're not satisfied with them, so they start making house rules, and
Oh,
even from there it might branch into another game. And I did that some, I'm sure, but I was not big on that. I just said, oh, I see how this game plays. Let me take that same system and go find a Ballantine book back in the day and find out
yeah.
what the order of battle is, and plop, I have a game, you know. And so the thing we weren't doing much back then was really trying to create a system that reflected that particular incident or battle or war or whatever. It was just taking what was already out there, pretty much. And so what I would say happened from when I sort of stopped being involved with it was command and control changed a whole lot. You started getting chit pull and card pull and all
Yeah.
kinds of different things, and morale became more and more important. The fogs of war and friction and all this sort of thing, people tried to account for that better and better, and until we then ended up with card-driven systems and all that. It's been interesting for me because anything especially with music, as I learned, you can't do anything innovative with music without knowing what came before you. And so that's been my same attitude when I started embracing game design, I got to find out what happened before me. So I'm now looking at a room surrounded by games because I've been trying to make that exploration. But
Yeah.
and I'll tell you what is influencing a lot of people, and some people might argue with me, but the Euro games, and
Oh, they're
which
great.
is, yeah, just a general category of them, but the way, and a lot of them I can't stand because they don't model something. They're like mechanics, and then they're skinned, with some theme. And I could never design like that. I have to have a theme, an idea, something from the world, something from history, something from reality, and then I want to model it. That's my approach to gaming. So, opposite of what they do, the way they design, but I'm still very open to say, oh, wow, that mechanic worked for that game, which has nothing to do with the mechanic but might be perfect for this game.
Yeah.
So I do recognize that. So that's been a big part of the adventure, is going back and just exploring and digging through history of design.
Yeah, we really kind of grew up in wargaming, and to see it grow to what it is now and the proportions. Once again, it's you know, if it exists, there's a game of it. But you also bring up another point, which it seems to be a constant here, is gamers never like any game they play. And there's somebody I know who works in the professional gaming space, but I won't mention any names. And hey, we'll get together and play this game. Yeah, I didn't like it, so I changed all the rules, which you're allowed to do. Um, Nobody from these companies are going to take your dice away from you,
Yeah.
but eh, you know, I always look, and especially in miniatures for tournaments, game rules are kind of a common language that we all could sit at a table. It's almost like music, and if you can read it, you can read it. That we could sit and play a game and have that shared experience. I don't know you ahead of time, um, but it's you know, I get asked all the time, especially on Facebook, and yeah, I've folks are gonna figure out who I'm talking about. There's a couple of you. They'll ask me these questions about game mechanics, game rules, and they'll send me their rules. I could tell when they stopped writing the game and play tested it and started jamming stuff in there after a while. It's just interesting. I think gamers themselves are just interesting people. Um, and the other one, gamers complain a lot. Sure, why not? But it's people don't know how hard it is to design a game, let alone a commercially successful game. It is not easy. So that's why I want to get into your design that's coming out, which I did get to play, and I've talked about to a bunch of people just this weekend. It was almost like fortuitous that I heard from you today.
Okay.
The John Wilkes Booth game.
Yeah, that's fun. And first I have to stop right here and say this was not my idea for the game. It was Ryan Heilman's, and so we're listed as co-designers, and we both worked on this project really hard. And I'll talk about what else we're doing together later on in the interview. But
We have a lot
regarding
to
this,
talk about.
yeah. Regarding this game, though, we got to the point where we were friends enough that we'd call up each other, we'd talk, and just come up with ideas. Hey, I thought I had this idea. He said, one day, he said, I think I've had this idea. Wouldn't it be cool to have a game about, capturing John Wilkes Booth? I said, well, huh.
They
Yeah, it
caught
sort of sounds interesting, but I have no idea how you do that. The very next day, I went to War Game Wednesday, Jason Matthews' event every first Wednesday of the month during the school
Yeah,
year at
at
Labyrinth
Labyrinth.
Games.
I
Yep.
was
It's
there.
where I met you. It's where I met you. And we're sitting around talking. This was the very next day. And you said, just out of the blue, wouldn't it be cool to have a game where you're pursuing John Wilkes Booth? I said, oh my God, to hear this again, it's got to happen. It's like a synchronicity or something happening here. So I
So
called back up.
I'm
Yeah.
mentioning the inspiration somewhere in the rule book. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Well,
you're definitely, yeah. Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, and so we decided, all right, well, let's sort of do it. Let's think about it. Well, I have that other game. I don't think you've seen this one yet. And it was signed by a company, and we parted ways. And since we parted ways, I won't say the company. So it is up for public publishing by somebody. It's called Terror Cell Washington, D.C., and it
I
is exactly what it says.
We saw that at you showed me at Circle DC. You were setting it up.
Okay. Okay. And anyway, I took some of the mechanics from that and started applying. And before I knew it, I had most of a game put together, and then got together with Ryan. And, he's great at developing too. He wears a lot of hats. And so he
He
helped
does.
clean it up. He did the graphics for the prototype and added some more mechanics to it. And so it's been, really a good partnership with Ryan, because we both, I think we both complement each other pretty well.
He's a
And
good guy.
so we have a game on the pursuit of John Wilkes Booth. So the first, if you want me to go into this a little
Oh,
bit more,
yeah,
the
actually, because it's funny because when I interviewed Ryan,
mhm.
I introduced him at the beginning, like with you, and he was still talking at this point. But Ryan's a great guy. One of the things I've noticed about him when I talk to gamers, especially in design space, usually after we start talking about game design, within 7 to 8 minutes, I know that you're a hack or you're not. And he's not at all.
No, no, not at all.
And we know he's never going to listen to this. But, it's from talking to guys like you, him, Herman Lutman, like you guys, or Jason Math, you guys get game design at a level. I'll throw Volko in there.
Oh
I'm throwing
God,
it
don't
over.
put me in it. I'm nowhere near his level.
No, I mean, it's not so much like, Charles S. Roberts Awards, but a lot of it is some folks get game design. They understand that it's, and I think you and I may have had this conversation, it's symphonic. You have to put that all together into one sound, where a lot of people just bolt things on to game mechanics, and it makes their games relatively unplayable and not
Hmm.
enjoyable. So, yeah. Okay. Enough of
Well,
Ryan. Ryan, come off the high, because we're going to talk about John Wilkes Booth in a second here. But okay.
well, yeah, and I mean, just to further address what you're saying, it's I think the whole design thing becomes a passion. It is a passion with people, and then it very quickly borderlines on obsession.
Yep.
And that's okay. I mean, these are just words. That's okay, depending on what happens in the rest of your life. But
Yeah.
I think if you talk to most designers, you're going to hear that. That's why um, I'm talking so much on this thing, this podcast.
Yeah.
Please do stop me every once in a while because I get
Nope.
passionate about it. I get
Nobody
passionate about history
nobody
and the
tunes in to hear
design and
me.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, they do not tune in to hear me. It kind of
Hmm.
is a passion. It is, you know, eh, it's really weird. Like in get into the mind of a game designer. It, it's it's a lot different than I would say a lot of other passions. Based on my schooling and my experience, I always try to figure out how something works and what was that design process. And
Hmm.
it's like you start seeing things and yeah, this is what I would do to make that a game, where sometimes it's just an inappropriate thing to think about. Um, because I think game designers see games everywhere, but
Hmm.
that's it makes them sound like a bunch of lunatics. Some of them are, but so let's go back to JWB. I think I told you that because of the book Manhunt,
Yep.
and a great book, and you should read it. It's written like a crime, not well. It was a crime, and you know, Apple made a series out of it. It was okay.
Yeah, we can talk.
Book,
That's a whole podcast to talk about that.
it
But you,
it is.
I read Manhunt. I mean, most of the game is based on that book. So, is a reference. So you might have been the one to suggest it. Even I'm not even sure.
Wow.
But I read a number of books, of course, and then tried to synthesize that together into the systems of the game. But yeah, I agree. But who was it? Amazon, Apple? What is it? What channel did Manhunt the show?
Apple.
Okay, Apple. Yeah, and it's crazy because Swanson, the author, was one of the executive producers. But as he says in his interview, he really had no say over what happened in the movie. And there are so many goofy things in the show. It's a great show if you don't know anything about it, but there's
Yeah.
so many goofy, historically inaccurate things just to turn it into an American action adventure show. And
You mean like
uh,
Stanton being the
yep, the
because
Cape Crusader. Yeah.
which it's kind of I so yeah, we're gonna have to get into history, so we might as well go with that there. I can understand why in the show they did that. He actually never went to Canada.
No.
There's a ton. He was never riding with the New York Cavalry to find him.
No.
Now, the only guy they got right was Boston Corbett,
Yeah.
because he is probably one of the most interesting characters in the book. They don't go into him any deeper, but when I played the game, one thing I saw was, holy moly, you guys did some research on that. Like the
Oh yeah.
research was so deep, because for those who are like, well, I kind of know where he's going. You don't, and Wes is going to talk about that in a second. The game starts in DC, but Booth can take one of eight. Is it eight
Six.
or
Six
six?
trails. Hmm.
Six trails to get out of escape the clutches of the law. And you guys really did a lot of research, because I know that when we were playing your playtest set, you were explaining the cards. And tell us about that, and then how easy or hard was that to translate into the game?
The first decision that had to be made was, all right, are we going to have him go on his historical route when he's trying to escape through southern Maryland and into Virginia? Or are we going to take the Union perspective that he could have gone to Canada, and we have two trails in that direction. He could have gone back to New York and gotten lost in all the people, and there were a lot of Southern sympathizers there and escaped out of New York. Because remember, he was a master of disguise too. He could have gone out west and gotten lost in the Wild West and headed to Mexico. He could have gone to the South, where he figured he had the most sympathetic helpers, and gone towards New Orleans and sailed away, or to Charleston and sailed away. So those are the options. And that's the whole point, is you got to find the perspective of a game like that. And we said, let's use the Union perspective. And now he's got all these possibilities he could go towards. But the historical flavor and the historical intent of all the cards relates to what really happened. But those things can happen on any trail, heading in any of those directions. So that's sort of how that is reconciled.
So take us through the game, because you could still order it, and it's not out yet. It's still in pre-sale, but we're going to ask you in a couple of minutes when folks can get it, and of course we have to mention where. But like at the 20,000 foot level, first of all, I'll steal some thunder. You cannot play John Wilkes Booth. He's not playable in the game.
Ah, so
Is
many
he now?
people asked us how they could play John Wilkes Booth. So that's the last thing we put into the game, was a
Oh,
system where one person could play as Booth. And so
ah,
they're actually do Booth pretty much like the game starts solo. You play it as a solo, and that's the best way to learn it. But then you can play it two-player cooperatively, two-player competitively, which is probably the most historically accurate, because everybody, soldiers, government people, police, were eligible for the $100,000 reward, which is about $2 million today. And so anyway, we finally came around, said, all right, people are asking about playing as Booth. It feels icky to do that, but we gave them an option. And what they do is they control the accomplices. And the accomplices can help Booth escape in various ways or hinder the investigation. So it still sort of balances
ah.
out.
And you
But
added this after I saw it. You know, it's
mhm.
funny. When I was talking to two different people, because Saturday I got together with some of the professors at MC. We played Weimar, which is an amazing game.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
Oh, it's amazing. And then I told them about that game, and everybody's looking at me because I think I was the only guy in there that's never wrote a historical book or have a PhD in history. And I go, no, 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 you don't get to play Booth in the game. And
Well,
I'm gonna have to tell them. I'm actually texting them now. I didn't lie. I just, life moves on. But so 20,000 foot. You have the map of DC, 6 ways
yep,
out of town,
yep,
and
different directions.
you got to hunt the guy down.
hmm So what?
Um, Get
Yeah, you want me to sort of tell you what you're trying to do then?
of course,
To
because
do that, okay,
yeah.
you have you're in charge of two detectives at the beginning. So two police, two cavalry, and they're encamped in DC, but they'll go out on the trails after them. But the basic mechanic is this: at the beginning of every turn, and there are three phases in a turn. The beginning of every turn, you take a Booth trail card, and that tells where he starts, which trail he starts on. Now he can advance one space, two spaces. He can go sideways towards another trail. He can stay hidden and not move. He can even backtrack. And so there's a lot of possibilities for him. It's infinitely replayable. And so how do you find out, then turn over these cards, is it takes so many clue points to turn over these trail cards to find out usually where he was. You don't catch up to where he is until you've turned over all the cards. And of course, every third phase, a new card is coming on for Booth. So the way you get clue points is you have your detectives, and police can help them, but you get two lead cards, and these are actual leads, so places to go in DC, the hotels, Ford's Theater, to look for clues. And if you can get a detective to these places that are mentioned, then you'll get to draw out of a bag some clue chits, which are in range 0 to 4, and you'll take your clue chits out, and you'll put them on that card that you want to eventually turn over when you get enough clue points. And so that's how you follow them on the trail. In the clue bag, there are also 3 ambushes. So we did take a little bit of liberties. The Union didn't know if this was a huge conspiracy. They didn't know if Mosby's Rangers had infiltrated DC and were about to try to take over, if a coup was happening, what was going on. So the ambushes can damage, hospitalize your detectives or get rid of your police. And I think of it also as they're just being sent somewhere else. Because no matter, even though this was the biggest manhunt in United States history, there's never enough resources, for
Yeah.
anything you want to do. So you have to manage what you have, and that can happen to you. So that's the basic thing. You're working off actual clues to get to find where he can be, and he can be anywhere on the board out of what? Something like, I can't remember, 90 spaces is where he could end up. And if
Yeah.
he ever gets to the end of a trail, or if you get to the end of the trail card track, which is, 9 or 10 turns, depending on the mode of play, then you lose. And so otherwise, you need to find him, what space he's on. You have to do a search for where his exact location is. Then you'd have to do a raid. So you have to do a lot right to get to that.
Yeah, yeah. I still remember playing it. I forgot who was playing it with me, and you were taking us through it. And I really thought it was like Colonel Mustard in the Library for Lead Pipe. But you know, if if you see a game with this title, the game is everything you would expect it to have. Has some really interesting and neat mechanics that I think are, you mentioned Euro games, so one could tell that you play a lot of games. Because remember, every game we create in the future, its DNA is every game we played in the past.
True.
I'm gonna put that on a coffee mug. Uh,
You
but
should.
yeah, uh, I just need to motivate myself. But that is kind of what I liked about it. The other part of it too is if you're a freak on history, like most people are, that war game, you you learn a little bit about it because, yep, it is taught in every school, right? Everybody knows who John Wilkes Booth is, and I still remember looking at the comments on Reddit from the miniseries. Well, I didn't know, and I'm like, and people were correcting the history. It's interesting history. You'll learn a lot, and
Yeah.
I kind of did. When is it? When am I going to get my hands on a copy?
Um,
I
let's see.
pre-ordered it. I'm just
Yeah,
asking.
we're gonna have you pre-ordered? Is it open for pre-order?
I thought you
Because the
did.
last I'd looked, it said out of stock, but he was gonna make it open for pre-order maybe this week. So if you looked recently, and then next week it's gonna be shipping, and
Oh,
it's gonna debut at PresCon in Charlottesville,
that's coming
Virginia.
up.
Yep,
Yeah.
next week, and so I'll
Where
be
can I
there,
order it
Ryan.
from?
Yeah, yeah, you come on down to PresCon. You should.
I will. But let's say I am living on the other side of the world and I'm listening to this podcast. What's the website I can order it?
Oh, it's Blue Panther LLC.com. BluePantherLLC.com. And then just, go on there. You'll look under, he prints, Blue Panther prints for a lot of different game companies.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of great games on there, but there's a lot of games on there on that site. But this is going to have the Blue Panther label, the publishing label on it. And Steve Jones, the owner, great guy.
I love Steve.
He's
Great guy.
Yep, yep. He does print on demand, as it's called, and for a lot of companies. And so he'll bring a selection, a nice quantity of this game to PresCon. But you can order it there and order it. They'll ship it to you. He's done. He really went all out on this. The only thing somebody might expect it to have, which it doesn't, is a mounted board. But we decided to do it on canvas just because thematically it feels like you're looking at a canvas map. And
You know, I just checked my
so
mail. I feel horrible. I did not pre-order it.
that's
So
okay.
I I I feel horrible. But I'm going to look for it now as we speak. I can't tell you how many games I buy when I'm speaking to folks, but yep, here it is, The Pursuit of John Wilkes Booth. You cannot pre-order; it says sold out. But tell Steve I want a copy, and maybe I'll even review it for you. No, I always pay for
No, that would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's supposed to be available as of a week from Thursday. So that's not 9
yeah,
days away.
9 days.
So he'll have it at the convention. So that means they'll also have them to ship out.
Awesome, awesome. I don't want this thing to sell out beforehand. So, but I like it. Recommend it. And people are like, well, the guy's here to talk about his game. Why are you trying to, move this along? Well, I can tell you why. Because there's so much other things to talk about. You have another game that's going on pre-sale next week.
The end of February is what I'm told. So, things change with schedules, but it's going to go on Kickstarter, and that's with Compass Games. The game is called Engine Thieves because that's what the Southern newspapers called the Raiders in what is more commonly known as the Great Locomotive Chase.
Yeah,
And so that's going to go on a month-long Kickstarter, they're telling me, with Compass. And as we speak, they're in the Pacific Ocean on the way to the U.S. So delivery will be, they're telling me, before Compass Expo in May. So um, let's hope that's true because it'd be great to have them there.
yeah,
And I've got a proof copy sitting right near me, and so I'll bring that to PresCon, and just to show how the artwork came out. Ryan had done the prototype artwork, which was wonderful and very historical and functional. And now they've hired other artists and stuff to do this, so
yeah,
it looks quite different, and it looks a cross between a war game and a Euro game, which I guess it sort of is. But
yeah,
man, Mitch, like just from what you're saying, I'll tell you this, with Engine Thieves, it's really if something is just historically accurate, it really is because it errs on the side of being historically accurate, versus being the most playable game in the world. It's a very playable game. I'm not saying that, but we really did go into detail with this, and it's a part of the Civil War games that just it's a type of game that's not covered by anybody that I know about because it's down to the man-to-man level. And each raider has its own counter. Certainly I have inspiration from David Thompson, but it's not
yeah.
State of Siege or something like that. But it's a war game with a lot of Euro type mechanics to model the psychology and the raiders trying to bluff their way through stations and this sort of thing. But
And I,
it's also a war game. It's a pretty bloody. If you, it's like any. Let me say this real quick. It's like any covert raid. Um, if you're the raiders, you're trying not to get into a fight, and yet you have a mission to do, which is very dangerous, and you're exposing yourself. And that's exactly what this is. So very rarely does a game happen, but occasionally that a fight never happens because the Confederates just can't catch on. But
yeah,
if a fight does, it's bloody.
I think you showed me the initial design, the board for it, or
Yeah.
maybe you showed me pictures on your phone. So, is this going to be a series with you? Any, crime, you know, assassination, stealing a train? Is that going to be a game? Are you out of Civil War crimes?
No, funny you should ask, because
You're funny.
12 years ago, my wife and I were at Politics and Prose, which is a fantastic bookstore in Washington,
It is.
D.C. And she's looking through something, I'm looking through something, and I see a coffee table book on the American Civil War. I open it up to a page, and it says, The Confederate Raid on St. Albans, Vermont. I said,
Yeah.
what the heck are they talking about? I've never heard of this. Well, it's actually, I found it to be the other side of the coin of the Great Locomotive Chase. It was Confederate raiders. Most of them were Morgan's raiders that, were captured and then made their way out of northern prisons either through bribery or escaping. And at a certain point, 20,000 Confederate soldiers were in Canada during the Civil War. And the Confederate Secret Service realized this and started thinking, what can we do with them? How can we organize them? And so they started one, there were a lot of dastardly Confederate missions, using smallpox and trying to burn hotels in New York. But this one was to organize raiders to cross the border, steal, rob from banks, burn down towns, terrorize people, and get back to Canada so that the northern troops, so many would have to be brought up to guard the Canadian border that the South would be relieved of a lot of military pressure down there.
That's
And
the
yep.
map I saw.
Okay, and that's
Yeah.
the first of all these games that I actually designed. And so there are 4 phases to that game, because if you read the story, there are 4 phases in the story, and they do impact each other. You have the raid of the town, and that's the main board. Then you have to escape to Canada if you're the raiders, and this can be played 1 or 2 players. And then there's a trial because Canada caught a lot of these people, and they had no rule, no law that said another country couldn't attack across their border into another country because it was too bizarre to think about, I guess. And so the trial, the U.S. was saying they're murderers because they did kill 1 person in St. Albans, Vermont, and they're bank robbers because they did stole the equivalent of $4 million today out of banks and all this, and they need to be extradited because of the treaty at the time. And the Confederates are saying, who they had all these agents working for them there, said, no, 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 they're working for the Confederacy. So finally, a covert mission occurs at the end of this game and the end of the story where they have to send certain couriers all the way to Richmond, get documents from Jefferson Davis, and never mind that they were post-written documents after the raid, but that said they were actually Confederate soldiers on a Confederate mission and brought back to trial because that's what hinged on them being let loose or not. And so that's the story. It's like fascinating. But I'll tell you one more thing about it. I said it's the other side of the coin because both raids involved about 20 raiders going behind enemy lines as civilians, springing into action to steal something of value. And in both cases, they tried to burn structures, bridges in the South, and buildings in St. Albans, and then they failed on that, and then they were mostly all caught, if not all. So a lot of parallels between the 2 raids, and that just hadn't been covered in games yet.
You should call it your felons and rebellions.
Exactly. That's a good one. That's a good one. I've sort of been calling it as, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's
no, I was just, I'll tell you this real quick. I'd sort of call it the great American, great raids of the American Civil War, but as a series, but the systems are not the same, within the games.
But thematically, it's good enough.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes to market a game nowadays, But, going through, we just mentioned 4 games that you have in production. I've seen 2 of the others and played Booth. If folks are out there saying this sounds interesting, it is as fun as it sounds. I would say pick up these games. That's my shameless plug, because I know that if the other games follow the same type of attention to history, the historiosity of the games, that folks will just dig the game. They'll have fun. They'll learn something, and then of course, it's a good way to spend an afternoon. As you could do a lot of dumb things, but it's never dumb to game. So definitely pick up these games. I mean, I think that you're taking an approach not only by topic, but by also an interesting blend of mechanics to bring really interesting games to market. And folks that I've met that have played the games or seen it, all have said really good things about all of them. So you know, you don't live far, and you know, at least we're doing the podcast. I know we're supposed to get together and play a couple times. You know, I invite you over now, but it's snowing and it's you know, it's getting late. So, but definitely check these games out. Um, who's producing the other two games? So we're going to go to Compass for the
Yeah,
Great Train.
Compass has the St. Albans and the Great Locomotive Chase games. And they chose to do the second one that I designed, the Great Locomotive Chase, called Engine Thieves, probably because it has a train in it, and those are popular in games, and probably because that event is more well known.
Yeah,
But then the other one I think will come out too, and I'm really excited about, you know, really all three, the way they play and the way they the 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 challenges they present are very different war game challenges, and I'm hoping people are looking for something a little different too.
yeah.
It's not part of another system that you'd be familiar with, and
Unique
so it's been
experience,
exciting. And Ryan and I have a whole bunch of things going on too, you know, with
which we're going to get to. You know,
hmm
this should have been a two-parter. So, you
Hey,
know,
I don't
you go
go to
ahead.
bed till 2 in the morning, so I'll stay up all
Oh,
night talking with you.
yeah. Well, we could do that. And I have to work from home tomorrow because the base is snowed out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, I gotta love the snow. So, you know, you meet Ryan, you're producing these games, and then I'm going to say this, it's half comical, half real question. Why the hell would you, in this economy with so many game companies, open up a game company called Warf Rat Games?
It's just one of those things
What
had
the
to
hell?
do.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Ryan came up with the idea and asked me if I wanted to be involved. And I said, you know, it's just too valuable of an opportunity and too exciting of an opportunity to turn down. We are moving slow. I think we've gotten a lot of publicity for various reasons, but we're
yeah,
moving slowly. We only have one game signed, and we're only going to do one game this year. And we're so very lucky that that's Herman Lettman's game,
yep. The
a forlorn hope.
That's the Great War game, right?
Yeah, it's basically in magnificent style. His, you know, Pickett's Charge game
Yeah,
transferred to a World War One trench warfare situation.
yeah. You
But
see,
we're
I
going to have 5 or 6 scenarios versus just one game. You know.
so one of the rules of the podcast, because of my love of the Great War, you can't call it the First World War. It's always the Great War.
Okay.
So yeah, so when I saw you guys at what was that? Fallen, which is a miniatures convention.
Yeah.
Um, I I saw some of the art. As folks
Okay.
know, I love I love that period of history, and I have a number of games that I help get to market on that. Mostly miniatures, but I'm excited about that game because one, Herman is probably one of the best designers. Of course, President Company included. Um, because you know, people say, "Well, what makes a good or great game designer, in your opinion, in the hobby world?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, there's some game designers that very well known names, but once I learn one of their games, well, I know how to play them all, which they could do for marketing. Yeah, there's an appeal there, but Herman just jumps around between sci-fi type games and in magnificent style was my you know what I told him, and I think Ryan as well, is once I got that, you know, I have a ton of Gettysburg games. Once I got
hmm
that game, I started giving the other ones away. And we're talking about some classic titles here because this is the one Gettysburg game I'm going to play, you know, I'd say for the rest of my life, but I'm probably going to get hit by a car soon. Um, it is that good. He is a great designer, and the fact that when you guys said that you know, you're doing his first game, and it's you didn't actually mention it when I saw you last, but it was so easy to figure out. I felt that, well, you can't lose with that. That is an amazing first game to put out. So a lot of folks out there, and I hear this a lot. Yeah, I want to start a game company. It's not easy. Tell us that
No.
story of how you get this done.
Um, we physically how we get a business going. That's one of the things that Ryan has a lot more experience and knowledge about. So he did all the business setup stuff, and we're partners. But we each put in a small investment of what we could both afford at this moment. So nobody's going out on any limb, and then we're going to do one game at a time. And but we are, unlike a lot of people that do Kickstarters, they're raising the money. They'll make a box cover and then do a Kickstarter. We're going to put the files into wherever the factory is that's going to print it the day after the Kickstarter ends, and we get the
Yeah.
money because we're doing it for that. But we plan to have all the art done before the Kickstarter, and we've hired an artist, and she's going to start working on it. And I think we're not taking off more than we can chew, and we're not doing this for our living. So that's the key, too. And we're not living on a precipice to do this by any means. So does
Yeah,
that sort of answer your question?
it does. It's you know, one you look now at the fact that a game by Lock and Load. I'm just going to give you an example that I got. It's the second in the series of their World at War 85. And look today on its Board Game Geek page. It finally arrived last week. And people who didn't get the game yet are just complaining. I ordered this game 3 years ago. And a lot of folks out there, they just assume that, it's all print on demand. It's not. Production's expensive. The other part of it is it's to take a game from initial concept all the way to something that is commercial and marketable takes a long time. And, some companies like, hey, we got the prints back from China and they were wrong. So there's a delay.
Yep. There's going to
People,
be that.
yeah, people have to understand that this is not easy. And, this is what I hear when I say it's not easy. I could do it. I will gladly have you on the podcast when we review your game as it's getting ready to ship.
Sounds great.
Yeah, which is that's why I haven't done a podcast in a few months because it just doesn't happen like that. It is
Yeah.
so much work. So I'm gonna give you my insight. Reading Ryan's mind, your mind, of why you did it. You two guys are like the most passionate about gaming. It just seems like a natural evolution. I could be wrong.
Yes, I think so. Um, I think it's just if you want to do something, there is a point when you work hard towards something, and finally you want to have the most control over it and what goes on with it. Now we're not a company that's just going to form to put out our own games, although we
Yeah.
do have some games that I think we will put out of ours too. But that's not the goal of this, and the goal is to really be a publishing company. But we also see how long it takes. I mean, a company that has a P500, which is really P750, and all that you got to go through, it takes a long time to, get your game up there and orders and then go through all the processes. Another method is used is, some companies hire a whole lot of designers or they, sign their games. And then all of a sudden there's this backlog of how long you have to wait. A lot of companies are doing that. And Blue Panther with the Booth game, a year ago, we had not signed with him, right? And had not signed that game with him. So it happens quickly with him because we don't have the final rules in as of tonight. And we'll get them in a day or two, I believe. And that's perfectly fine for him to have X number of games ready to sell in a week, you know,
Yeah.
because he is a printer. And so that's like really exciting, you know, too, to have that as a choice too. But we just want to do things our way and to do them on our schedule. And basically, in 3 years, we both might be at a new state in our careers that we will have much more time to work towards our company. And in the meanwhile, we have 3 years to get people to know about us and put out a few games that are hopefully very high quality.
Yeah, and I wanted to have you guys right away when you announced it. Like, you know, um, because I think that knowing, and it goes back to what I said a while ago, like you could talk to them for 10 minutes and know they understand games. Guys that understand games, uh, if they're going to publish, those are going to be pretty good games. And the fact that you have a gifted game designer doing your first one kind of
Yep.
shows that people believe and have bought into it, which I think is great. Somebody the other day asked me what P500 means, and I said, "Well, you order the game when you're 21, and by the time you get it, you have to get up and pee 500 times in the middle of the night." And that person did not understand what I was talking about, and I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" I go, "One day you will remember this conversation. I will be long gone, but you'll remember it." So,
No,
yeah,
it's not that bad, of course, but and there's a lot of great game companies which we all Ryan and I both look up to and respect, you know, for what they have done and are doing in the world. But we want to do things our way, which will be not signing a bunch of people at once and do as high quality as we can too. We're looking at doing miniatures in this game and for, you know, on the board, but it's not the kind of miniatures that those people that say, "Oh, I hate miniatures," are going to hate. It's going to really fit into the game so well. So,
so you know I'm a trisexual gamer. I do board, miniatures, and computer, and
mhm.
I'm actually working with a guy to write an expansion to an RPG. I don't play them. Um, But yeah, most of the board gamers that say they look down at miniatures are like because they can't paint or don't have the time to paint, and I'd rather hate something than get FOMO. Um, because I've taken die, die hard, board gamers, and I had them play a miniatures game, and they loved it. And there's so many what I call tween games out there. It's in between miniatures and a board game, and these are kind of slipping into the bloodstream of gaming, and folks are just not noticing it
Yeah.
because has to have hex encounters. There's some great block games out there that use area movement. Yeah, but still, and it's kind of how you get them into miniatures. When I saw you at Fallen, have you ever been to a miniatures convention before?
I think I went the year before, but I think I saw you at that one too. And that's
Yeah,
about it. Bill Molyneux,
yeah.
took, you know, when that first one I went to, which was, you know, this summer would be 2 years ago, he sort of took me under his wing and showed me what was going on, gave me a tour of it, and then he stuck me into a World War II game with some people. And yeah, it was fun. Um, you know, I think there were 6 people playing all different units, so it took a long time to come back around to your turn, but it was fun. And I think here's what I think we're all after in our own way is immersion into the game. Um, you know, you want to feel like you're really doing something in the game and that you're really part of it and it really is the real thing. I think all of us that play these games uh, want to feel that, yeah, we really are part of this history right now. We really are making these decisions
Mhm.
and stuff. Miniatures helps some people immerse more,
Yeah.
you know, whereas others counters do because it has all these numbers and these stats on them that are printed right there, and that makes them feel more like, yeah, they're really fighting that battle to some extent, you know, just for those minutes while we do it. So I think that's the difference in some ways. And Certainly you could say Hex Encounter has gotten more complex than the average miniatures game. And so those that super value that, that's going to matter to them. But
Yeah.
I think, mhm.
Yeah.
No, I'm
No.
just saying, I think if anything, we're circling back around, and even some of the old grognards are saying, I don't want something as complicated anymore. It's hard to read a rule book that many pages or for that long. So
Yeah.
we're coming back around that. We're not coming back to super basic beginner games or something like that, but we're coming back to make sure that they're very playable and very learnable.
So yeah, and then the other pushback I get from board gamers, and maybe you've heard this too. It's not realistic. It's playing with toys, and I'm like, what do you play? And they'll name me 10 or 15 games, and I go, none of those are realistic. And the game that we ran, because I came up from work, and we ran a Great War game based on an actual game that we used for analysis for the Marine Corps battalion,
Hmm.
when they were looking to redesign the Marine Corps battalion, and we had a bunch of people play, and a lot of them said, "Wow, this is interesting as shit, but it is hard and it's not fun." I go, "Yes, but it is, as we say, somewhat realistic, and realistic games are not fun, and gaming is about having fun. That is why I think inside every board gamer there's somebody that would love to play miniatures, just is too scared to paint.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I would never
Yeah,
paint.
I mean, speaking of which, like, I wrote an article was a couple of years ago. I stopped painting, but I painted 2,473 Civil War miniatures.
Oh
Tell
my
me when
gosh.
you tell me when you and Ryan want to play, because it's fun, and in some ways it's really no different than a board game. It's just more, you know, it's more physically appealing.
Yeah,
I like,
yeah. Well, there are things like Hero Forge and an
you
Eldritch
know,
Foundry where you can design your own. And I did that for Terracell DC. I said, I want to make some miniatures because I just discovered it. And then
yeah.
I bought the files, which is not too expensive, and then found somebody that lives near me even that 3D printed them. And then I said, I don't want to paint these things. I probably do a horrible job. Anyway, so I actually paid somebody to paint them. And
Well,
now they look real cool and I hardly use them.
I I would have I would have done it for nothing, but they would have felt
Oh,
like you paid almost nothing for it.
no,
Um,
well, I paid quite a bit for it.
yeah, I mean, you look, when I had to get, in miniatures, I have Picton's entire third division, but I sent it
Hmm.
to Ceylon to get painted because there's something about that Napoleonic uniform with,
Yep.
British turnouts on their coats that you just want right. And, it was great to also feel like a job creator. So I'm glad I did that because gaming's fun. There's nothing, there's nothing I'd rather be doing. But
Yep. Yep. It's a
so,
blast.
so you guys will be at PresCon, which I think is next weekend, right?
Yeah, yeah, we'll be there. One or both of us will be there at Thursday to Sunday.
Wow. So
And I know
who's
I will be, and I'm not sure exactly when Ryan's gonna be
Yeah,
popping in.
like, it's one of those things, like, who's ever there on Friday has the most stable marriage, because PresCon, it's always it's on President's Day weekend, which
Yeah.
is always the second Monday and I'm like, it's gonna fall on Valentine's Day. But then again, a good gift
No,
for anybody is
it'll be the weekend after Valentine's weekend.
no, I thought
Yeah.
it's this coming weekend, isn't it?
Well, maybe it does start then, but I don't go until around the time the vendors are going to be there because that's more valuable to me,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
especially with Booth coming out. So I won't. I'll go like the Thursday of it, the Wednesday night, and then be there all day Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we'll be promoting
Well,
Booth, and I'll have Engine Thieves there too.
maybe it is the week after. Well,
Yeah, so that Valentine's is this coming Friday.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I don't, but maybe PresCon starts Sunday or something like that. I don't know.
or maybe it's I got the weekends wrong, which is possible.
Yeah.
'Cause I think I told you online the other day I haven't watched news in 90 days, so I don't even know
Oh,
what day it
wow.
is. Yeah, I set my alarm clock Monday through Friday to always wake me up at this time, but I had no idea. I didn't even know this was February.
Good grief.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because if
Yeah.
I don't see the moon, I can't tell you what day it is. So
Oh my
I'm old
goodness.
school.
Okay.
I'm
You're
real old school like that. So
you're 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 Cro-Magnon school or something. I mean, it's like way back.
yeah, I'm crow
If you're
something.
going by just the moon.
Yeah, well, you know, it's easy. It's the first way I learned it. When I came out of the cave. So speaking of gaming, yeah, you have games that you because people don't understand how much play testing takes up your gaming time, but
Yeah.
what are some good games you've played that maybe you're not a good friends with the designer?
It's good games that I've played that I'm good friends with
Yeah,
the designer.
no, that you're not like
That
games you play for fun.
oh, wow, I play very few games, honestly. And
Really?
I now have a drum student that before they forced them to go back, to the buildings, works for the federal government and all that. He would
Yeah,
come over, he goes in really early to work and out of his house, and then he would come back, and come an hour or two early before his drum lesson, and we'd play games because he's a gamer.
yeah,
And that was really cool. So we did a lot of easy games like that and strategy games. And wow, we played Watergate last. And that's just so cool because it's so
yeah.
thematic and
It is.
such a tight design. And I want to play The Hunt, that little game with the naval game, that has hidden movement in it. I like
Oh,
hidden movement games.
by they gave me a copy of the Hunter Review and I gave it away.
Oh, okay.
I feel bad. It's they also do the game Scope. There's a bunch of I think it's by Phalanx, right?
No, this is hang on one second.
Uh-oh. He's gonna go check his
It's
collection.
oops. You there?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I took my headphones off.
Yeah.
It's by Salt and Pepper. It's a small box game,
Well, I am thinking of
and
somebody
it's
that might
Matthias Kramer and
who did
Ingen Kunter.
who
Yeah.
did Weimar.
Yeah. Okay. And um yeah, did he do Watergate too? I'm not sure. But
I
it's
he might well Matthias, right? Did I know he did the one you just mentioned. So
the yeah. So
um
anyway, so I've been playing some of those shorter, smaller games, um, more as of late. The time where I played the most games was the first year of the pandemic because my daughter was living in the house with us, and we played 3 or 4 nights a week for that first year. And
nice.
so I always remember that. But otherwise, I go through and look through the rules, look through the games, try to study, what's going on. Um, one game that's a favorite of mine is Black Orchestra, the,
Yeah,
assassination attempts
yeah,
of
it's a good game.
Hitler. And it's a very good game. And so I'm just looking around here. Of course, the Fort Circles games, those are just such high quality and all
Yep.
the extra things that come in them. They're
I
great.
Kevin's
And
one of the guys that complains I don't have him on. I said because you and I are going to be talking about the stuff we often talk about, and I can't afford another E rating.
mhm.
So we got this new lieutenant colonel at work, and he wants to know all about wargaming. So I had him play another guy at work, Shores of Tripoli, because we have it in the office. And he
Okay.
played it, and like right away he thought like, he's a bad Marine because he didn't do that well. Um, and so the next day, he's like, I really screwed that up. I want to play it again. I go, name me 3 ways that design abstracted either something, like either combat, time, and then what were the 2 biggest drivers of what was the biggest driver of the game mechanics? And he got that one, the cards. But the
Yeah.
abstraction was like, what do you mean? I go, look, you know who wins the world's best war game? He who abstracts the best. Because nobody wants to play Campaign for North Africa and boiling pasta.
Yeah.
And when I explained that, he goes, that's not really a rule in any game. I go, hold my beer. And yeah, it is. I mean, it's just interesting. His games are just that good, and I know he did that one, but I I always bring out Tori's game,
Hmm.
the suffragette game. These are just such good games, and you know I'm going to say this now. I've said it before. If anybody says these aren't really war games, I swear to you, they're conflict games.
Yes.
There's no real such thing as a war game. Any game where you pit 2 sides against one another in any type of context, you know, you could
Well,
call it a war game. There's no definition.
yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned, and just sort of boil it down to conflict because that's what Warf Rat Games, which, by the way, that is our website, warfratgames.com, if
Warfare.
anybody's interested.
Yeah.
But that's what we say we will be trying to publish are conflict games in the historical, sci-fi, or even fantasy realms. And, we also want them to be like, under 90 minutes, playable in 90 minutes, and to have at least a solo mode to play.
Yeah,
So
that
those, and I think that fits into what a lot of people are looking for, and we didn't pigeonhole ourselves too tightly into what we're going to offer.
yeah. Well, I
So,
mean, I think that approach, I think that you guys will be drawing more people into gaming space. Um, it's just I know that the times I saw you there at the miniatures convention, for Blue Panther, miniatures players actually should gravitate more towards the board games if they're interested in the subject matter. And I always talk about the 2 different types of gamers. Yeah, what are they? They're cousins in a family. They don't always get along, but they need to understand each other because they're in the same damn family. So yeah, I really hope that especially with Herman's game coming out, which it's a great war game. Take my money.
yeah.
And as you guys go, that kind of springboards into more interesting
Yeah.
games and interesting designs. Because one thing I know about you and Mr. Heilman, you know what a good game is, but you also know what may seem like a risk isn't a risk with our community. And
I hope not.
yeah,
By the way, I should tell you this, Ryan has the rights to Brave Little Belgium back.
I know.
So we're going to do a deluxe version of that. Will be one of his that we're going to
Yeah.
release.
Well, you
And
need
I
to.
have I guess I have I said what's the most gamed battle in the world? One of them, Battle of the Bulge. So I have a new system for a Battle of the Bulge game we plan to release too. Playable in an hour and quite a different mechanic and way to play a war game. So if that works, I'm going to have a whole series based out of that because, for anybody that says I'm not really making war games, these will be
You
war
are.
games, but they're way different. And I want to play that with you at a War Game Wednesday sometime and get your feedback.
We're gonna actually have to meet up. My new gig really has me busy. You say Battle of the Bulge. I'm looking outside, and
Yeah, it really could be.
it is just
Mhm.
not stopped snowing, and yeah, it's
Well, remember, you're getting it worse than us because you're probably what, an hour south of me, and I'm in Maryland, and this storm came out of the south and said that you all
Oh,
should end up with more of those.
you live off the Beltway, right?
Yeah, 4 miles outside the Beltway.
Yeah, I mean, I live 4 miles off the Beltway myself,
Yeah, yeah,
4.7. So it's an hour in traffic,
yeah. Okay.
without a doubt. Yeah, but
Hmm.
you know, I I would love to go to a war game Wednesday. I know, like Jason's like, do you know anybody? And I'm like, I wish I did, um, but I tell you what they run down there at Labyrinth Games it's the first Wednesday of every month. Folks should
Hmm.
definitely go to that. It's interesting the folks you get at that because I thought I knew a ton of gamers in this area, and they're folks I've never met before. At least when I met you, we were talking on Facebook for some time,
Yeah.
and I've never like, yeah, it's kind of interesting, and that's the beautiful thing about wargaming. You could sit down at a table. You could have a friend when the whole thing's over with,
Yeah.
or
Oh, yeah.
somebody you can't stand or hate. But
And it's a really nice. It's a large age range.
yeah,
There are always several women there too. It's not just a bunch of sweaty guys, and
old
it's
white guys.
it's been real cool. We had Josh Timpkin past time. I recommended him to Jason, and
What's
he
he
has
got?
a game out on WizKids called Wartime, and it's sort of ancients. There's archers and all this kind of stuff, and uh, pikemen and all this, and but his command and control innovation is you use timers, and when any unit does something, you turn over a timer, and they're different lengths of time, and they can't do anything until that timer is run down.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. 'Cause so he decided to go this whole how can we more interestingly simulate command and control. And you have 30 and 60 and 90-second timers, so you have to choose which one you're going to put on each. And I guess it's modeling friction really well too. But
Yeah, with the day job, it came up like, well, we haven't done a game that looks at logistics and command and control. And I still remember going back to my old boss, who I'm actually he's supposed to be speaking. He's a retired 3-star. And he goes, we need a game on command and control. I go, sir, command and control is in every single war game there is. A game without, or a fight without command and control is a bar fight between two dudes. Um, and like the other one about logistics, somebody once asked, how do I infuse logistics in my game? And I'm like, how do you know it's not there already? Well, because I didn't put it in. I go, you have movement values.
yeah, it's already baked in an
Yeah.
abstraction, and yeah,
Because
exactly.
do
Well,
you have the
that's where
best
we
one?
are.
Yeah.
This is exactly where we still are. People are still searching for that, really fun new way, because we're not professionals, we're hobbyists, the fun new way to model command and control and friction and fog of war. And I mean, because let's face it, that's the biggest thing that's totally unrealistic with just about all the war games out there, because everybody can see where everybody is.
You bring
And,
that up, and that's
you know,
interesting. So
hmm
I'll give you for instance, Command and Colors, that
hmm
great system. I mean, it's all the way from ancients to World War II. They have a great War One as well. Great core design, but it uses a card activation mechanic, right? You can only
hmm
move based on what your card says you can do.
yeah.
And I get dudes telling me that game sucks because I want to move all my stuff when I want to move it. I go, dude, real war doesn't work that way. That game, that a mechanic like that, if done right, is fog, friction, um, command and control problems, and logistics. You can only
Yeah.
fight based on what you know, what you can sense, and you need bullets. And people don't understand the abstraction sometimes. And if you guys want to get bored, I'll sit down. We'll talk offline about command and control in games, and you'll be like,
Yeah.
"No, this is too much. I'm not drinking that damn Kool-Aid." But you know, I'm excited to get these games in my hands, and will have to. I will make another hollow promise. I think as you guys start developing games, and especially if you need a play test of a Herman's Great War game,
Oh
I will
yeah.
make a trip. I promise to come up and play these games and talk about it, of course, here on the podcast or post about it because I'm excited about what you guys are doing. Um, very excited about I saw the art for Herman's game, and I'm like, yeah, I don't. Well, the game's based. I don't care what it's based on. Take my money now so I can start playing it. But one of
Well,
one of the things. Go ahead.
yeah, he's playtesting. I'm sorry. Ryan has put up a tabletop simulator, and you just need to get in touch with him if you want to play test that version. But also, he's put together a physical copy, and we'll be taking that down to PressCon.
Well,
So
you guys
we'll be
also
plus
need.
testing there, and yeah, that would be fun to get together with you and play with the physical copy and run it through. And it can be played. It's mainly for solo, but at the same time, it can be played with multiple players, each in charge of a battalion. And so it's a double-sided board. One side is for solo, and you have 3 battalions, and the other side is you could play each it has more squares in it and stuff, and so you can divide the battalions between several people
So I'll tell you
and
what. I'll go
coordinate.
one better. I could get you a room full of play testers.
Hmm.
Once again, open invite for you two guys to come down to work anytime to talk to my folks,
I would
and
love to.
we'll take you down. So we're actually hosting Maurice Suckling on the 7th of March.
Oh,
You
very
guys,
cool.
you guys want to come on down? Come on down. But you probably want your own time. You don't want to suck up each other's oxygen. But you guys always know that you have free time. And I was getting on Ryan all summer about coming, and the summer just slips away like it always
Yep.
does.
Yep.
So, but yeah, without a doubt, always open invite. But you know, here we're coming up on an hour and a half. Most people have been asleep that are listening to this. Do you know what?
Okay.
Do you know what most of our listeners they do it when they paint?
Hmm.
Yeah, for some strange reason. Like your voice is in my head when I paint, and I'm like, I don't know if you meant that as a come on line, but I'm definitely aroused. But let's go through the games again and where you can find them. So the John Wilkes Booth game, Blue Panther LLC. Just do a search,
Dot
find it.
com. Yep.
.com,
And at conventions, he'll have it at also many conventions,
and say hi
and
to Steve.
definitely will.
Yeah,
And Engine Thieves will be available on Kickstarter through Compass Games. Late February, early March. They say it's going to run 4 weeks, and then with quick delivery because they'll be in their
yeah.
warehouse by the end of it.
Which is how
And
Compass does that, which is
yeah,
great.
yeah, exactly, exactly. They're probably among the best positions business-wise of any company because they've announced they've got like 15 or more games in their warehouse. If the whole country shuts down for some reason, they can still fulfill, national orders
Yeah,
because they're not going to be dependent on anybody after, till a year and a half is up or something.
and
Um,
um, and then of course go to Warf Rat Games,
yep.
which I know that you guys named after the city of Baltimore, but I do tell people it's named after the Grateful Dead song.
Yeah.
Just go with it because there's a lot of deadheads out there
I
that
think it's appropriate. Yeah, well, whatever they think it is, that's what we'll say. Yeah, you're right, and please the
and
customer. And
yeah,
if we ever did change to totally war games, we can be war frat games. So
yeah.
works that way too.
Oh, I like that.
That's
It's very punny, my friend.
But
Um,
do yeah, and come we've been giving away a game every month. We have the Rat Chat show, which is on YouTube. We
Yeah.
comes out the beginning of every month, and we've been giving away a game to anybody signed up for our email list. So if you go onto our site and sign up for the email list, you'll be eligible. And they've been all World War One games now for a while
Which
because we're
is kind
or
of interesting.
Great War games. Sorry,
There you go. There you go.
and
Because
and
I tried reposting one of yours on our Facebook page, but you can't share it. And
hmm, oh
but you guys are raffling off one of my all-time favorite Great War games, Steel Inferno,
oh
which
yeah, yep,
I remember reaching out to Walter, and I'm like, tell me when, because he was leaking art, and I actually got one of the first copies during COVID, and he sent me
really.
the yeah, he sent me the neoprene map, like just as included it, and it is the best game on attritional warfare. Then I there's no other game like it. It is easy and fun to play, but if you want to know what attritional warfare is like, and it's like, oh, I hate trenches, play the game. Have you played it?
I have it and have not played it, so we got to get together and play it one day.
We got to get together and play it. I
Yep,
love it. It is
it won awards. I know that.
it because it's a really good design, and everybody's saying, hey, you're supposed to do another one in this series. And I remember he told me what that was, but it is little 1918 action, little, but I'd love
Hmm.
to see Fellowship of Simulations do another game like that because it's it's good, and the art is amazing because he had Tardy do all those cards. It is such a really good game, and look, if you hate it, I'll buy your copy off you.
Okay.
There
The
you go.
remember now Herman's game with us, a Forlorn Hope,
Yeah,
is Push Your Luck system is the nucleus of the game,
which he's the
and
master at.
it's very very appropriate for World War One. How
Right.
hard are we going to go forward? When should we hunker down? Or get shaken or something like that if we don't watch it, right? Panicking.
Yeah.
And he's really comes up with great mechanics like that. And of course, he had it in magnificent style. And
Right.
so now that the original pitch to Alan Emmerich with Victory Point Games for in magnificent style was this game, a World War One trench warfare game. And Alan said, I love the idea, but I don't love World War One.
Yep.
So let's do a Civil War. So Herman said, all right, we'll do Pickett's Charge. And so for 14 years, he's had this one in the back of his mind. And we said, let's do it. And he said, sure. So
So I
that's how it came to
actually
be.
I had that game, but it was a small little game,
Hmm.
and I couldn't find it like years later. And
Ah,
yeah, so I haven't told Herman that. So I'm
well,
kind of bummed.
remember Worthington then
Did it?
republished it as a very
Yeah,
nice looking game. And I think they're
I have that one.
doing their third printing or something if right now, if I'm not sure mistaken.
Yeah, such a good game.
Hmm.
Well, I'm gonna let you go.
All right.
And Wes, far too
Yes.
long. Thank you so much for this.
Well,
I
thank you for having me. You
uh,
realize I'm the only designer you've ever had on your channel that never has had a game published yet. Now that's going to change next week, and then it's going to change again in another month. But,
actually,
you know,
you aren't. You aren't.
I'm not.
No, no.
Who is my kindred spirit?
So who else have we had on? A lot of miniature guys we've had on whose games are coming out.
Ah, okay.
I'll get you a list. Um, Now I'll tell you something too. If we have anybody on before their Kickstarter, it hits all funding goals day one.
Oh, well, Ryan and I want to come back and talk about a forlorn hope, and let's do that
No,
towards the
we
end of the
will.
summer before the Kickstarter, and
Yeah,
before that, we'll meet up with you and let's play it.
yeah. Oh,
Th-
without a doubt. But Once
I'm
again,
really curious.
you guys come on anytime, and you're like, "Hey, should I bring Ryan?" I go, "No, no, no. Ryan has already gotten two. I want to have him back on, but like I said, you have a unique story, and I wanted to make sure we covered that and give it its due. And you know, once again, thanks. And
Well,
I'm going to turn it back
thank
to
you.
Shawnee in the studio. And once again, thank you guys for listening.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at No Dice, No Glory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.